Hey guys, my name is Suede. I bought Civ 6 and I'm loving this game so far, but it falls into a lot of the same pitfalls of other new titles. You can see the title of this video, clickbait list, old man yells at cloud, let's do it. Number one is that a lot of the game's mechanics are obtuse and by design hard to understand. You see this in a lot of games nowadays, it feels like a throwback to old school tabletop RPGs almost. But adjacency bonuses, how do I know how many foreign trade routes are passing through my city? Tiles adjacent to unimproved features receive +1 appeal in the city. What are you talking about? And those aren't cherry picked, by the way. Those are the first three promotions of one of the governors. Just picking a civ in this game was terrifying. I kept looking for one that seemed simple to play, and I failed miserably. All of them were loaded with unfamiliar stuff. I went with Congo for my first game because the description said they make you mechanically unable to do a bunch of things. But just trying to figure out how to do anything with my bonuses, let alone use them optimally, was a huge chore. Like, to get a statue, I needed to do a thing to do another thing that maybe got me a great artist. And then the great artist would maybe give me a statue. All of that to get one tick of the Congo Civ bonus. Why can't I just have a flat bonus to a stat I understand? It's hard to make informed choices here. In my game as Pericles, adopting aesthetics gave 8 cultures, 8 culture, and adopting Grand Opera gave me upwards of 50. And it doesn't flash on screen telling you how much the culture, the change will net you. I just have supposed to pick between these two policies and find out on my own which one gives me more culture. How am I supposed to do that exactly? Am I supposed to seriously go through my cities and count? Better bring a calculator too, because a lot of these are in percentages. Generally, I'd say that the way information is given to the player through the HUD in this game is good, but it's like an 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10. The game is so complex that it needs to be a 10 out of 10, and that's just missing. That, or they need to use more intuitive gameplay mechanics. I already know what you're thinking. But Suede, this mechanic and that policy are so intuitive and easy to understand, and that might be true. But that brings us to pitfall number two. As you add more content to your game, the game becomes more complex and more frustrating to learn, even if the stuff you're adding is getting less complex. I don't think game developers understand this. And this is certainly true if the average complexity of each individual piece of content that you're adding is staying at the same level or is going up. Sadly, I'm going to use League of Legends for an example. It had 40 champions on release. Currently, it has 168. And a lot of the champions have ability descriptions literally longer than the script of this entire video. I checked, that is true. But occasionally, they'll throw players a bone and they'll make a simple champion, and then they act like that makes it okay. That the complex new champions are balanced by the simple new champions. That's not how this works. Any addition to the game increases the complexity. Unless they're going through and simplifying the other mechanics from earlier on, which they don't, the game is getting harder to learn and more frustrating. And all of this is true in Civ 6. This game has 78 different leaders. Civ 4 is closest with 52, and they didn't all have custom powers the same way they do in Civ 6. There are more pantheons, there are more wonders, there are more units, there's just more everything. There is more content, and more content is not always good. Number three is forcing you to interact with their systems. Maybe this isn't new, but it's definitely worse now that games are more mechanically complex. My good friend Lemon Cake did a great video talking about what makes a mechanic bad using the estates system from EU4 as a counterexample of something good. His conclusion was that a pivotal ingredient for this, for non-core mechanics at least, is can you just ignore them? They give depth to more experienced players, but are new players forced to stumble through using them? Civ 6 is full of countless counterexamples. Don't like spies? Hope you like barbs spawning in your land every 5 minutes in the modern era. Don't like the World Congress? Too bad, you can't escape the screen until you pick 6 things. Don't like diplomacy much? Well, you didn't send a delegation immediately, and now the AI are calling you every few turns to give cryptic messages that are probably about how much you suck. Civ 6 isn't even the worst offender here. It does have plenty of systems you can ignore. Big systems too, like Faith, surprisingly, is one of them. But that brings us to point number 4. So, point number 4 is visual clutter. This is actually the reason I didn't buy the game until a few weeks ago. All of the playthroughs I saw online were so visually dense that they were impossible to decode. The clutter makes it difficult to figure out what key information is, like, is this tile improved? Is this being worked by a citizen? Is there a road here? And of course, the classic, where is the oil on this damn map? The clutter comes from a bunch of different sources. The quantity of content is a big contributor, like the policy menu, where by the end of the game you have to choose between like 50 policies or so. Even if you ignore faith, enemy missionaries will just pile up in your land, even without open borders, and you'll constantly be seeing their religion spread. In this game, I built a naturalist, but I couldn't find a park for it to build. Ridiculous because I have so many mountains, as you can see, but It just hung out in my land, pissing me off for 50 turns until I finally banished it to a city-state so that it would be out of sight. In my Congo game, I got upwards of 50 great people, and great people in this game are only able to do one thing. So if you can't figure out what to do with them, they just hang out there in your land. I ran out of spots for certain types of great works in the Congo game, and so all of these useless artists and musicians just started piling up outside my capital faster than northwestern Nevada during Burning Man. And that would be fine if you could just stack them in one city and forget about them. But Civ 6 uses 1 unit per tile, and so they all fan out all over your land. And let me tell you, clicking on things in this game is very hard. I had particular trouble trying to merge units for armies and firing shots from the city center. But the whole game is constant battles between clicking on a tile, clicking on the thing on that tile, and then clicking on the thing the next tile over. You try to bomb a city, and instead you bomb the tile next to the city. You try to bombard a unit, and instead you just walk your artillery next to their unit. And God forbid you actually try to move the map by clicking and dragging. You're just bound to send your unit off somewhere really, really stupid. I'd say combat-wise, this is all improved from Civ 5, actually. The addition of armies mean that you don't see those super huge, like, carpets of units anymore. But it is still a persistent issue across many facets of the game. Okay, number 5 is being afraid to have bad things happen in your game. Let me tell you a story. Recently, Wendy's announced surge pricing and everybody lost their damn minds. If they'd instead just raised prices across the board by a modest amount and then gave discounts during off times, no one would care. This is a known quirk of human psychology. People like seeing bonuses, they don't like seeing penalties, even if it amounts to basically the exact same thing. And game devs are smart to pay attention to this, but Civ 6 is the extreme end of the spectrum, where the game is scared of not showering you with good news every single turn. There are certainly bad things that can happen, but they're distractions, like natural disasters, spies, and barbarians. They're not baked into the core trade-offs of the mechanics the way that, say, that anarchy used to be. If you want something good, you have to suffer for it. And there are so many bonuses in this game every turn. Era score, new envoys, new government titles, Eurekas. And these are just the ones that are new to Civ 6. If I mess up my mountain tunnel because I thought I could go harvest those crabs over there, but instead the mountain tunnel leads nowhere, the game still throws me a parade. Even if you enter a dark age, a literal dark age, the game still lets you make a dedication, get a big bonus, and adopt powerful dark age policies. And I don't know what to make of this. This one I might be wrong on, maybe it's a good thing, but I think that it makes an already notoriously addictive franchise even more addictive without being more satisfying. As a developer, if you have a fun game, you have the power to make the players eat their broccoli. And my hunch is that being forced to constantly shower your players with good news has to be a limiting factor in terms of good game design. Alright, number 6, confusing complexity for depth. As long as you've googled en passant before, mechanically, chess is a very simple game, but it still has a ton of strategic depth. Holding depth constant, complexity is actually bad. It does add some variety, at least if the game is properly balanced, but complexity this intense leads to an incredibly frustrating learning experience. And for what? Why do rock bands need their own custom, some of them pretty confusing, sets of promotions? Would the strategic depth of the game be ruined if this was omitted? How about archaeologists, or those naturalist guys who make national parks? How about tourism altogether? Would it be so bad if the cultural victory was won with culture and not tourism? And I guarantee there's going to be some well-meaning Civ 6 zealot in the comment looking at my gameplay on screen and telling me that I'm a huge noob who's not fit to criticize and doesn't understand the game because my specialty districts are not adjacent enough or whatever. But tell me this, how did I crush your game so hard? It took me 4 games to win on Deity. Not 4 games on Deity to win on Deity. 4 games on any level. This game is so face-meltingly easy, and that doesn't make the game bad. Just like my favorite game of the franchise, Civ 3 being hard doesn't make it good. But it does make you wonder, why is the difficulty tuned in a way that somebody bumbling through the game who barely knows what's going on is able to win on the higher levels? The answer to me is obvious. The game mechanics are disgustingly complex, and the developers knew that they had to give people a free ride if they wanted them to play. The default assumption is that you will never understand the intricacies of how this game works. And that's bad. I don't know what else to say. That's just really bad. Alright, that's all for today, guys. I have so much to say. I didn't even mention the DLC packs and the fact that despite supposedly buying the complete game package, I'm still missing a bunch of the leaders. And I have a lot of nice things to say too, I swear. So if you want me to make more Civ 6 videos, let me know in the comments. Cheers.